Break thou the bread of life, dear Lord, to me. As thou didst break the loaves beside the sea, within the sacred page I seek thee, Lord. My spirit pants for thee, O living word. Bless thou the truth, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst bless the bread by Galilee. Then shall all bondage cease, all fetters fall, and I shall find my peace, my all in all. Thou art the bread of life, O Lord, to me. Thy holy word, the truth that saveth me. Give me to eat and live with thee above. Teach me to love thy truth, for thou art love. We're studying this evening in Lesson 107. If somebody will give out the page number for the new book. 496? 426. Last week we were looking at Jesus giving some insight to his betrayal, his crucifixion. We kind of ended with the fact that Judas had given the religious leaders the information, or was willing to do so, that they might arrest him. We're not going to talk about what day exactly this is. The next lesson will go into the confusion over the term eating the Passover. Talked about some last week, and we'll talk about it some more next week, so there's no need to talk about it this week. Just hang on. Here in Lesson 107, it is a continuation of those things, the preparation for the celebration of Passover. Again, Brother McGarvey puts a note here as to when he believes that this is day-wise. But again, that's a best educated guess. We really don't know the exacts. The lesson tonight coming from Matthew 26, 17 through 20, Mark 14, 12 through 17, and Luke 22, 7 through 18, 24 to 30. Again, if you have the book, the workbook that we're using, textbook, we're just going to be reading the scriptures. It has notation ABC. John does not record a parallel to this, so this just comes out of the three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Beginning in verse 7 of Luke 12, talks about the day of unleavened bread came, on which the Passover must be sacrificed. And of course, 15th day of the month is when the Passover took place. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread began on the 15th and continued on for 7 days. We talked about this last week. All of this together many times is referred to merely as the Passover, and some will refer to the Passover as the Feast of Unleavened Bread because, as we said, those things bumped up. We do know that it was time to make arrangements for where the disciples would be observing the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread so as to be compliant with the Jewish customs that had to do with the removing of leaven from the food. The more strict Jewish households, the women would literally scrub the house from ceiling to floor. They would cover over their countertops, their tables. They'd put brand new or laundered tablecloths, all that, cover everything up so that if they missed anything that might cause bread to be leavened, that might bring about that effect, it would be sealed off. And as I read and as I think about what the women did in preparation for the Passover, it's always been in the back of my mind. We always talk about spring house cleaning. And we hear people talk about deep cleaning. And I've always wondered, since the Jewish women early on in what would be our March or April were cleaning their houses and scrubbing everything and putting laundry out, clean laundry out, tablecloths, all that, trying to get rid of the leaven. And I always wondered what influence that had on our customs of spring house cleaning. That these Gentiles saw these Jewish women going crazy right around the time we think of as spring, cleaning their house from top to bottom, making it shine, and they felt that they had to keep up with the Joneses. I just wonder what influence maybe that had. But there were preparations, and it was more than just, again, finding a place to have the Passover. Here we see again, as we go down here, and like I said, we'll talk about this more next week, but it says, now on the first day of unleavened bread, when they sacrificed the Passover, his disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we go and make ready for thee to eat, that thou mayest eat the Passover? It was customary for various homes there in the area of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, because of the pilgrims that came in, to open up their guest rooms and places in their homes. I'm sure that probably was businesses, what we'd think of today as hotels, motels that rented rooms to travelers that were coming in. And so you needed to have things established where you're going to do this. And you have to get together all the details of where we're going to get the unleavened bread, who's going to make the unleavened bread, how we're going to make sure it's unleavened bread, who gets the lamb, who takes care of the lamb, the whole deal with the wine which was used on At least, I think, 3, if not 4 cups were specifically used during the Passover celebration at different parts. The bitter herbs and all that went along with that. And again, the room. So there needed to be some plans. They at this time, and to me, again, I know we're going to talk, I said we weren't going to talk about it, but we're right against the Passover, and no plans have been made. The thing that's clear to me at this point is we haven't got a clue what we're going to do. We don't have a room. We don't have a lamb. We don't have unleavened bread. We don't have the herbs. We haven't got anything ready for the Passover. You women start thawing the turkey on Thanksgiving Day. You go out the store and try to buy a turkey on Thanksgiving. It just seems strange to me that this is supposed to be the Passover and they've got absolutely nothing prepared. We don't know where we're going to be, how we're going to be doing it, who's getting what, how we're paying for. There just to me seems to be a lot of things going on here that raises a question mark. I'm not saying that it's not the Passover, but there's just a lot of what seems to be unpreparedness for a man who was always known for being prepared. And so when we're looking at all this, again, people could question, what does it mean by the first day of unleavened bread? Technically, that's the day following Passover. So they had to have unleavened bread before the Passover. They had to get all the leavening out of the house. So we're back to all that, but whatever. The disciples come to Jesus, and he, being their master, their teacher, and them being his disciples, he would have been seen as the head of the household. And so as the head of the household, it was his responsibility to prepare the Passover. All these things they're asking him. Where are we going to do it? Who's getting what? How's it all going to get put together? And so they're asking him this because as their teacher, it would be like the head of the household. And of course, the Passover was celebrated originally. Each family was to have their own Passover lamb. And if the lamb was more than their family could eat, then they were encouraged to invite neighbors to join in on the Passover meal so that nothing would be left in the morning. And so, again, where wilt thou that we go and make ready? Jesus, I know we've been at this for a long time, but Jesus goes to Bethany, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, which is close to Jerusalem. He has been in the town back and forth. He's now on top, and they've been in and out of the Mount of Olives. And of course, it just keeps going on. We've been all over the place. Where are we going to stay put long enough to be able to celebrate the Passover? And so we're told that he sent Peter and John, two of his disciples, saying, I think that should be go and make ready for us, the Passover here, and at least in mine it says God, but I think it should be go. Does you all say God too? I think it should be go and make ready for us the Passover, that we may eat. And so Peter, James, and John were part of what many have referred to as his inner circle. They're the ones that was on the Mount of Transfiguration, with him. They are the ones who were the furthest in the garden with him when he was arrested. And so some have referred to them as the inner circle. And so he sent Peter and John to make ready. And if that's all that he said, everything was pretty much up to them to make arrangements. But in addition to that, he said unto them, where thou wilt, that we may make ready. And he said unto them, go into the city, and behold, when you're entered into the city, there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house whereunto he goeth, and wheresoever he shall enter in, say, and ye shall say unto him, the master of the house, the teacher also saith unto me, my time is at hand. I keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. Where is the guest chamber where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples?
Brother Brian, what do they refer as the Passover? It says, to kill the Passover so we can, eat it. We're saying what the Passover is.
That's the lamb.
Huh?
That's the lamb. It's interesting. Here's another thing. Just like with the donkey that he rode into Jerusalem, we have another situation here where when he sends Peter and John, they say, well, where do you want us to go? Jesus at first just tells them to go and get things ready. And that's a big general statement. And so, where do you want us to go? We've been to Bethany, we've been here to the Mount of Olives, we've been in Jerusalem. Where do you want us to try to do this? And then he goes into more detail, sending them down to the city there in Jerusalem. And he tells them of events that are going to take place in the future. You're going to find a man bearing a pitcher of water. When you enter into the city, you'll be met by a man carrying a pitcher of water, and you're supposed to follow him wherever he goes. And whatever house he enters into, you're to inquire about the guest room, the guest chamber that is there. Now, this is Passover. As I said, how do you know that this chamber is going to be available? This is a busy time. But nonetheless, Jesus looks to these things. He knew that the upper room would be available. He knew about the young man that would be carrying the water. And so Jesus, as he's talking to them about events that are going to take place, and as he begins to talk to them about some of the last things, he's also showing them that he very well knows what the future events are. It's amazing. If Jesus knows that if you two go into Jerusalem, there's going to be a man carrying a pitcher of water, and you follow him wherever he goes, and wherever he goes, ask about the upper chamber. If Jesus knows that there's an upper chamber available, and he knows that young man or that man is going to be carrying water to the house where that's at, how is it that people can say that God, Jesus, and the plans of God, they were taken by surprise? That God intended to do one thing, but the Jews kind of surprised them, sabotaged their plans, and so in a haphazard, thrown together at the last minute thing, he established the church to make do until he come back. If he knows about a guy carrying a pitcher of water to a house that has a vacant upper room, I don't think he got taken by surprise by anything. And this goes back to the fact that people just don't read and they don't think about what they're reading. And this that he's given here to many, this is just an amazing thing, but they never take time to think about if Jesus can know these minor details to this extent, he most certainly will know the major events that are going to be taking place. And notice here in this part, it says, my time, when he says, the teacher said unto thee, my time is at hand. Not just talking about the Passover, but he's talking about his life being sacrificed on the cross. All throughout the scriptures, Jesus keeps saying, my time has not come. My time is not yet. My time has not come. It's not my time yet. But when we come into this time, he starts referring to the fact that my time is come, or my time is at hand. And so he knows that it is time for the crucifixion, and he knows that's going to take place during the time of the Passover. And these are the things which God had already proposed and laid out. So again, down here in 15, and it says, and he will himself show you a large upper room furnished and ready, and there make ready for us. Now, how does he know that there's going to be a large room in this house? And because they're preparing for the Passover, and they know the chances are that someone's going to want to use that room, they have already started getting things prepared as far as getting the table organized, getting, those kind of things. And they don't have the herbs and the lamb and all that stuff, but they've already got the room prepared. Of course, the Last Supper that we see the painting of has nothing really in common with the way the Last Supper really was held. Most of the time, tables were very low to the floor, much like what we see in some of the Japanese kind of homes. And there were cushions, not chairs, even though sometimes it's translated as a chair in the scriptures. More than likely, they were cushions that people would rest on. They could sit on them, they could lay, and as was the custom many times, they would lay on their side next to the table, and they would reach up and get things and eat. And many times they were all around the table. Of course, that don't make as pretty a painting as the one that we are familiar with. But the room is there, and the room is prepared. And so they did as Jesus asked. They came into the city, and they found things as they were told, and they did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. They started the process of getting things ready for that. And the disciples did what was appointed to them. And now, when evening was come, when it was evening, he cometh with the 12. As we look at this, there probably was more than the 12, but the 12 came with him. How many more may very well have came with him, I don't know. We know that there was at least 120 that was there, that stayed in Jerusalem until the day of Pentecost. I'm not saying 120 people were there, but there probably was more than just the 12 that was in attendance, though the important part about this is all 12 of the apostles were there. On the resurrection of Jesus, we know that Thomas was missing. It's important for us to understand that even Judas himself, who was numbered with the 12 and was one of the 12, even Judas was there at the start of these things before he ultimately went out to betray Jesus. Anything down through here? And when the hour was come, he sat down, and the apostles with him, and he was sitting meat with the 12 disciples, and he said unto them, with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I say unto you, I shall not eat it until it be fulfilled in the kingdom of God. Now, it's interesting. Notice what he's saying. He says he's going to eat the Passover, but then he turns around and says he won't be eating the Passover until he eats it new in the kingdom of heaven. So, again, just at least hold on to that till next week. But like I've said before, why would he not eat with them if this was the night of the Passover, the literal Passover? Then he had everybody else eating, but he didn't. He didn't observe the Passover. Here is a man who is supposed to be a righteous Jew, but he's not observing the Passover. He's just sitting there watching everybody else. I won't eat it until, again, it be fulfilled in the kingdom of God. And of course, the sense of that was the unleavened bread and the fruit of the vine are the implements of the Lord's Supper. And again, these are things during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which again may or may not involve the actual Passover. We're told that he received a cup, and when he had given thanks, he said, "Take this and divide it among yourselves. For I say unto you, I shall not drink from henceforth of the fruit of the vine till the kingdom of God shall come." Now, this is an interesting verse because in other places, when we're reading about this in Matthew and others, it says, "Drink ye all of it." And when he takes the cup, it says, "Drink ye all of it." That's what the one-cuppers latch onto as proof that it is the cup and not the wine which was in the cup. But notice here, as we're looking in Luke's account, he takes the cup, or he receives a cup for which he gives thanks, and he says, "Take this," that's the cup which has the wine in it, "and divide it among yourselves." What does divided among yourselves mean? Divided means it's going to be separated. I want you to divide the contents of this cup up among yourselves, but I'm not going to partake of this cup till I drink it, in essence, new with you in the kingdom. And so, unless they cut the cup into 12 pieces, it's not talking about the cup. It's talking about the fruit of the vine which was in the cup. And so for those who hold to the idea that it is the one cup that they were drinking out of, I'm not saying that there may not have been a cup or a utensil that had wine in it which was given to him. But then he takes it, and when he gives thanks, he tells them to divide it among themselves. And, I've told people over and over again, how many people here, when you have a dinner, only put one cup on the table? I don't see one hand going up. Surely somebody here only puts one cup. When your whole family comes to eat, you just pass that same cup around. No. And so these verses here show us that there was what perhaps was a larger container, which is referred to as a cup, perhaps a goblet, something to that extent. But Jesus tells them to take it and divide it among themselves, and then they were to partake of it. Now, again, when you open up a bottle of grape juice and you pour it into the cups in the tray, you are dividing the grape juice, but it's still coming from a single container. We don't slurp out of the bottle, we divide it among ourselves. And of course, in some cases we have pre-measured stuff, but nonetheless, Jesus uses the word, and I would encourage people, if you're interested in this, to look, if you have access to Greek dictionary, look at that word there in that verse, and it's clearly talking about dividing something. It's like dividing a biscuit. You cut it in half, and you do all of those kind of things. And so we know that he is instituting the Lord's Supper, but this is part of that, to divide that among yourselves. And there also, we're told, rose contention among them, which of them was accounted to be greatest. Now, it's interesting that we jump on into something else. Here's the thing. What do we take first in the communion? Where's the bread in this? Well, we just looked at. See, this accounting here and the things that we're looking at, somewhere he has already given them unleavened bread and they have ate it. And in the midst of all of that, he told them that this is my body, which is broken for you. And this is part of the other. So we jump in here in Luke's account. We skip right over the unleavened bread except again, if this is part of things leading up to it, they would have been primarily eating unleavened bread and the fruit of the vine. But we jump into something else. While he's trying to institute the Lord's Supper, there was still this contention among them of which of them was accounted to be greatest. This was an ongoing thing. We know that James and John sent their mother at one time to ask Jesus to allow her sons to sit on the right hand and the left. There were lots of contention among them. And who's going to be Jesus' right-hand man? That's what we're looking at here. I mean, when all is said and done, when we finally get around to this kingdom thing, most kings have somebody who is kind of in charge. The king doesn't go out directly and do his bidding. He sends people, like he sent John and Peter to prepare for the Passover. That's what a king would do. He wouldn't go. When the president is preparing to visit another country, he doesn't go and make the arrangements, does he? No, people go ahead of him and make sure that everything is as it's supposed to be. And so Jesus is trying to tell them about his betrayal. He's trying that night to talk to them about his death. He's instituting the Lord's Supper. And in the middle of all of that, all they can talk about is who's going to be the greatest among them, who was going to have the preeminence. You know, I've been with him the longest, I've done this, I've done that. And so I don't know what all they were arguing about, but it's clear that they were literally arguing. There were contentions among them. Well, you know, you say you did this, but I did that. And somebody else says, yeah, but I did this, and I did that, and I've done this, and I went there. And so they're again, sitting there at the table, arguing. Sounds like family, don't it? Trying to have a decent meal, trying to, again, have a solemn moment together, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever it is, and the next thing you know, people are arguing at each other's throat. Yes?
That, about the bread, that's in verse 19 in the Standard, American Standard.
Yeah.
It's in verse 19 about the bread. It said, and when he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you to do this in remembrance of me.
And that's backwards, isn't it? Now that makes it backwards. Unless he gave thanks for the cup, then he passed it around and had them divided among themselves into what we think of as their own cups. And when they had done that, he gave them the bread, and then they took the bread, and then they partook of the cup. But that's backwards, yes.
In verse 20, it says, and in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, this is the cup which is poured out for you, is the new covenant in my blood.
There's lots of stuff going on there. But it would tend to imply that he took the original container, cup, whatever it was, and passed it around for them to divide among themselves. And once they had divided that, he apparently took the bread and then gave thanks for that. They break it. Then after that, they took from the cup which they had their portion that they had taken from the cup. But there's a lot of things in all of this that gets really confusing. What exactly is going on? So again, we know ultimately that the Lord's Supper, it begins with the bread and it goes to the cup from the other scriptures. Jesus then begins to talk to them, saying the kings of the Gentiles have lordship over them, and they have authority over them, are called benefactors. But ye shall not be so, but he that is the greatest among you, let him become as the younger, and he that is chief as he that does serve. They're thinking about a system of government like Rome. You got Caesar, and then, you have all those different people underneath him, down to the governors and all the provinces. And each one of them are exercising authority over somebody below them. And that is the structure of the Roman Catholic Church. One person, and then the archbishops and the bishops, and then et cetera, down through the structure. And so that is the structure of the Roman government was carried over to the structure of the Roman Catholic Church. But notice what Jesus said, but that's not the way it's going to be with you. Peter didn't listen, did he? Because Peter was the first pope, right? Peter put himself up there at the top of the pyramid and he rearranged the structure of the whole church, right? No. That structure that we see was a gradual progression that ultimately, when Constantine and them took in Christianity, they began to pattern it after the things of the Roman government taking control and exercising control. But Jesus said that the one who would be greatest among them would be as the younger. Now we know that the younger is supposed to submit to the older, and we're supposed to submit to one another. But he says the greatest will be like the younger, and that means one of submission. And those ultimately that will be chief will be those that do serve. For which is greater, he that sitteth at meat, or he that serveth? Is not he that sitteth at meat, but I am in the midst of you as he that serveth. And so part of this goes along with what we will see as we go on later into John 13. On that night after the supper, with this contention and things that was going on with them. After they ate, we're told that Jesus girded himself with a towel and took a basin of water, and he went around and he washed the disciples' feet. He was trying to teach them a lesson, not that they should wash each other's feet. That's also if they need it, but the point wasn't about foot washing. The point was about being a servant. The servant of the house was the one who met the master and the guests at the door with a basin of water, who would wash their feet, that would anoint their feet with oil or offer them ointment for their feet and for their face and their hands. This is the servant that John the Baptist speaks of. When John said that he wasn't really even fit to loose his shoestrings, in essence, of his sandals, this is the job of the household servant, that when the master comes in to loosen or unlatch his sandals, get his feet out of those sandals, have some comforting, cool, refreshing water there to wash his feet, ointment and all of those. And when he talks about Jesus, he said he wasn't even worthy to be that servant who, washed his feet. That's the image John the Baptist is trying to get across. And so Jesus uses that same image to try to show them that the way of greatness is not by exercising authority over people and compelling them to do things under your authority, but to be great in the kingdom of heaven is to learn the lesson of being a servant to all. If you want people to respect you, if you want people to, the greatest chance of having a relationship with them of honor and respect is to know that you care about them and to help them in the adversities of life. And in so doing, you create a relationship where you are seen as someone who is unique, someone who is special, and that holds a great place in the hearts of people rather than someone who's merely trying to compel or force them to do something. Jesus said, "But ye are they that have continued with me in my temptations," and all of the things he had went through. And he says, "I appoint you unto you a kingdom." And of course, that kingdom is the kingdom of the church, "even as my Father appointed unto me." Of course, the kingdom belongs to Jesus. We'll learn that as we get in the book of Acts when we finish this. "That you may eat and drink at my table in the kingdom." Now, I'm sure they kind of had big, grandiose plans, but when he talks about eating and drinking at his table in the kingdom, what's he talking about? The communion. He's talking about celebrating the Lord in the kingdom, and that they would sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's exactly what these apostles did at the beginning. They took as apostles and leaders of the church. They judged among the Jewish converts, and no doubt for several years the church was Jewish, and so they were leading and directing and judging the people of Israel as they were learning and coming into the church and learning about Christianity. And of course, in due time, that extended and expanded on out to the Gentiles. By any questions or comments? Our time's about up this evening, so we're ready to go in 108, Lord willing, next Wednesday evening. Thank you for your attention and your comment.
In closing this evening, we wish to thank you again for spending your time in study with us. We hope the lesson has been uplifting and motivational. We encourage you to return again for our next lesson. Until then, may we invite you to visit our website. You will find many study opportunities. Our resource page has links to the Gospel Broadcasting Network, a 24/7 station with many great Christian programs and speakers. In Search of the Lord's Way, with Brother Phil Sanders. We have 2 links for Bibles and downloadable software. If you are looking to really expand your knowledge, perhaps you might like to try World Video Bible School, a college-level learning site free of charge. So, until next time, may God bless and keep you in His care as we walk together in His truth. And remember, as always, the churches of Christ salute you.